Last week, we did Luke and Vader as far as comparing like those lightsaber endings. This week, who do you think was more powerful, Mara Jade or Leia?
Can I just take a second to say that I don't know where this Mara Jade depiction came from, because I know how she's drawn in the books and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I'm really attracted to Mara Jade.
I thought you might.
I was kind of looking at her. I know.
But, they're black pants and they're white pants this time. But.
Man, I was just like looking at and you know what? If they got her, whoever she is, to play Mara Jade, I'd be all about it. You know, because, I mean, there is a similarity there. I mean, the way Mara Jade's drawn in the books, it's almost like, oh, man. I almost want to say like, who would play her? It's like, there's a couple actresses that have that general look.
I always thought about the girl from, what is it called? Unhappily Ever After?
Oh, Nikki Cox, yeah.
Yes, Nikki Cox, yep.
She could do it. I could almost, well, she'd have to bulk up. Like, Kristen Stewart might be able to do it if you dyed her hair red. There's like a couple of, some of those typical actresses that you see in a lot of these movies that have that sort of look.
Is Rebecca Romaine Stamos?
She could probably do it again. Well, she did dye her hair red for Mystique, right? Yep. So, I mean, that would work. Amber Heard would actually work. She was in Aquaman. She played the redheaded chick.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and I'm not just saying that because she had red hair in there. Because I think she's normally like blonde. I mean, she's a little crazy because, she sued Johnny Depp for domestic violence. And she's really kind of loony. But, hey, I think she's got actually the perfect disposition and everything. If I were to cast Mara Jade, it would probably be Amber Heard. That would probably be at the top of my list. I'm sure there's others, though, that, would fit the bill or whatever. But that would be it. And that's basically when I saw this photo that we used, I'm like, you know what? As a reality is, it's probably just somebody. It's probably not even, yeah, exactly. Somebody doing a cosplay thing. I'm sure it's not even actually an actress. I don't know. I don't recognize.
Ronaldo says, I understand you. Every time I see Mara Jade, I say, Luke, you son of a bantha.
Yeah, well, that's what was kind of cool, too, is that, a lot of people, in case you don't know, well, first of all, if you don't know who Mara Jade is,
yeah,
as there might be, I think most people that are watching the show probably know who she is. But if you don't, she was introduced in the Timothy Zahn trilogy. Basically, Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, Last Command. What was basically considered episode 7, 8, and 9 before Disney came along.
Right.
In the expanded universe. That's where she was introduced. And she was basically the Emperor's hand, which was kind of like an assassin. And her whole thing was when Palpatine was killed, she wanted to get revenge on Luke Skywalker. Eventually, they fall in love, they get married, they have kids, the whole shot. But she's like, she would use a lightsaber sometimes. I mean, she was like really adept at fighting and strategizing and all kinds of stuff. I mean, she was
pretty powerful.
Very powerful. To the point where in hand-to-hand combat and things like that, Luke had almost no chance. He had to use the Force against her. But it wasn't like all this stuff happened in one book. I mean, it actually dragged on for a while. And she ended up becoming a fan favorite character. And she popped up in a ton of other books. Because one of the things that was cool about that is that people would, when other authors would come in and write books for the expanded universe, a lot of people would pick a lot of, I almost said Thrawn, Zahn's characters and use them. So even though somebody like, say, Thrawn wasn't in every single novel or anything like that, Mara Jade certainly was in a lot of them. Talon Card, Kip Duran, all these guys, all these people that basically originated in that Zahn trilogy ended up becoming main characters throughout the entire expanded universe. So that brings us to this particular segment, which is in, I guess, period, right? It's just who's more powerful.
Right.
That's a really difficult question to answer. Because on one hand, I would almost have to say Mara Jade. But then on the other hand, I guess it really depends too, because if you go by the expanded universe timeline, and then you go by where we see Leia around the same time, I would actually, in new canon, here's how I'm going to answer this.
Okay.
In new canon, I'm going to say Leia. In old canon, well, it wasn't really canon. In the expanded universe, I would probably say Mara Jade, because Leia she trained, but she wasn't really so much of a combatant. In the expanded universe, she basically was really more using it for her politics and diplomatic stuff and everything else. I mean, she did train. She knew how to fight. She knew how to do all that stuff. But the bottom line is, if Mara Jade was starting to take out Skywalker himself, Leia wasn't really going to be much of a threat to her. On the other hand, in new canon, though, you see that Leia's a little bit more powerful. And, she was training. I wouldn't even say this if it wasn't for the fact that if you actually go to the Rise of Skywalker and you see those flashbacks and stuff like that, only because she was starting to use the Force. But I guess if somebody tied me down and said, no, you can't do any of that cheesy stuff, you got to say overall who is the most powerful, I would have to say Mara, only because even at the time of right after Return of the Jedi in new canon, Leia was basically just training with Luke. Mm-hmm. And she was just developing her Force powers. So, I mean, I would have to say, overall, that I'd have to give it to Mara.
Okay. Let's see. Ronaldo says, in this case, I think Leia wins. I feel like she is wiser than Mara, although it is complicated. We have not seen the full power of Leia in canon.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. I mean, because on one hand, you can make the argument that Leia would definitely have the ability to, because she's Luke's sister. Certainly, if she trained in the Force. In fact, there's a lot of Lucas even acknowledged that Leia actually, if she were trained, would be more powerful than Luke. Mm-hmm. And I remember you and I even talked about that at length at one point, because she's not as reckless. She's more, she basically came up from the time she was a kid in politics. She has wisdom. She has poise. She has logic and strategy and diplomacy. And she has all these skills that she could use, that if she developed her combat skills and then her Force powers, she'd be pretty much unstoppable. Mm-hmm. But the problem is, and that's why I hesitate to say it, is if you're just going by, because, the other thing, Ronaldo, too, that you have to look at is the fact that we haven't seen Mara Jade in new canon yet. So we really don't even know what they would do with her. Mm-hmm. Because that's one of those things. I mean, look at what they did with Thrawn. Now, granted, pretty much almost all of Thrawn's attributes are intact. All they did was they played with the timelines a little bit, and they made him maybe a little bit less villainous than they did in the expanded universe. But that said, you still have to basically look at it and say, look, guys, I mean, it's one of those things that they haven't really brought Mara Jade in enough, well, at all, that you could say definitively. So the problem is they changed Leia in the new canon a little bit, and they haven't brought Mara Jade into the new canon at all. So it's a really apples and oranges comparison. So you almost have to either do it one of two ways. You either have to go compare them both in the expanded universe, or you have to just try to go expanded universe Mara in the way she's depicted in that versus Leia as she is now.
I think I'm going to side with you. I'm going to go with Mara, simply because for all the reasons that you just said. Leia, I think she had the potential to be more powerful than Mara, definitely. But if we're just going based upon what we got, it's still going to be Mara. And the reason why is because of her master, Palpatine. Once again, you're sitting under one of the brightest strategists.
Well, that's another.
And then on top of that,
point
you
too.
know,
She was trained to fight Jedi. She was trained to fight all these people, and look at what she was doing against Luke. And I just can't help but think that, and there's a lot of aspects about it I don't remember. You got to remember, man, this is almost 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That, don't forget, 30 years ago was 1991.
Yep.
That's when the first Zahn trilogy came out. So pretty much like 30 years ago, and, so figure like maybe 20 to 30 years ago is really when I'm heavily reading the expanded universe.
Ronaldo says, I haven't read the Thrawn trilogy in a long time, but didn't Mara kill Luke's clone before marrying him?
Yeah, I believe that did happen, actually. And I mean, even in other battles and stuff like that, Mara was basically like beating him. And I mean, at first, I actually didn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of like, I don't really know if I like this new chick coming along and defeating Skywalker, because the problem is, like, look, can't we just get Luke to be powerful? I hate it when they do that. They finally get a character to where they're powerful enough, and now you just want to see them come into their own, and then it's like somebody else comes along, and it was almost like what was happening to The Mandalorian to me.
Right.
But, that didn't.
He also says, that seems a bit strange to me personally. I don't know if I would date a girl who killed a guy who looks exactly like me.
Well, I mean, but if he was an evil version of you, though.
But was he an evil version?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that, I mean, because you also have to think in terms of how would you even react, right? Because it's funny how we'll talk about stuff like this. We'll talk about it as if it's normal. I mean, you really have to think about, like, how would you even live in a world where there were clones of you running around and, stuff like that? I mean, you would probably have issues with that. The fact that she killed an evil clone of him probably would endear her to him more than anything, because it would really, I know I would really hate it if there was a clone of me running around.
I would too.
Yeah, it's like, right? I mean, two of you?
Yes.
I mean, what would really be hilarious is to get the clone to co-host the show one day. So it's like, I'm Eric Vansel, and I'm Eric Vansel. I mean, it would just be kind of strange. It would just be really weird interacting with a clone of yourself. So you had to put yourself in that kind of a mindset. I mean, this is about as nerded out as we could probably get. But you have to, a lot of times, especially when it comes to fantasy or science fiction, because there are certain themes that have been repeated in each one of those genres, we have come to accept them almost as if they're real, but we don't really stop and think about the implications of it.
Right.
And I think that that's definitely the case here, is that I don't really know if Luke would be too happy about it. Now, granted, I do understand that even in this, and this is where Lucas went a little heavier on the sci-fi than on the fantasy when he introduced cloning in the first place. I mean, cloning is not a fantasy-based trope, This is more of a sci-fi kind of thing. But I think that even if you're used to that, you would still have a problem if it wasn't something you authorize of there's a clone Luke Skywalker, especially given the fact that, if I remember correctly, that clone was bad.
Mm-hmm. It's like Bizarro.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, Ronaldo finishes things up here by saying, I think Mara will appear in canon at some point, but I think she will be very different. I wonder about that.
Yeah, me too.
I wonder about that, because I would almost argue that if they brought Mara into new canon, I would almost argue that they wouldn't change her that much. That it would almost be like what they did with Thrawn. I don't think that she would be changed all that much. Now, granted, there are certain things that have to be changed. Maybe. Some people would point to the fact that, she wouldn't be in a relationship or married to Luke Skywalker, for instance. But that's not necessarily the case. You could have had that all happen before The Force Awakens.
Mm-hmm.
And then something happened to where either she was killed, or, they just got a galactic divorce, or, some weird thing. Or maybe that's the real reason why he fled to Octo and was just like, you know what, I'm done with women.
She put him out, so.
Exactly, yeah. It's kind of like, he's sleeping on the proverbial couch or whatever. I mean, these are the kinds of things that is kind of nice about the fact that The Force Awakens and Return of the Jedi are so far apart, is that you can actually bring in, I remember actually making the argument that you could. Well, first I made the argument that you could have made the sequel trilogy Zahn's trilogy and used Rey, Finn, and Poe and just replaced Han, Luke, and Leia with those characters, and the story could have been pretty much intact. But then I went a step further at one point, too, and said, you know what? You could bring the Zahn trilogy, because remember, it takes place like right after Return of the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
You could still do that with Han, Luke, and Leia. Obviously, you'd have to recast them, but you could take that storyline and still do it, and it would still leave the canon of the real 7, 8, 9, the sequel trilogy. It would still leave that untouched. And in fact, if they really wanted to do a soft reboot of the sequel trilogy, they could do that. Now, people would have to get past the fact that they'd have to recast Han, Luke, and Leia, but
All right.
I mean, I would almost, to see those stories come alive, as sad as it would be not to have Han, Luke, and like Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, and Mark Hamill in it, I think I would accept it better. You know, the only other way they could do it is maybe make it animated movies.
Yeah, you could do that.
And then just use their voices and then get a Carrie Fisher sound-alike or something. And then
Right.
that would give you the best of both worlds. You'd still have Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill at least, and maybe Billy D. Williams. And, you know, you could still do that. And if you did those as like an animated feature film, which is something that really, even though Lucas did it when he owned Lucasfilm, that's something that Disney has not explored yet. And I'm really kind of shocked.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it may come. I mean, I think, we get in series and things like that, and I think we might go into that. But I think because of the Clone Wars, which was highly successful, which is essentially, you can say those almost like feature films.
Well, you could say the same thing about Rebels, and I'm sure
Yeah.
some of the,
And
Bad Batch probably.
Yeah, Bad Batch.
But what I'm saying is getting away from episodic animated series and go more for animated film. And you're right, that could be the next step. But, and don't get me wrong, I mean, I'm glad that they moved away from animation and more into the live action, because that's really what we wanted.
Yeah, I think that's what fans really know for Star Wars right now is just that live action.
Yeah.
Ronaldo also says that if it's revealed that Kylo killed Mira or something, God protect the soul of that poor Lucasfilm worker who came up with that idea, because the fans will murder him.
Well, I mean, the fans are going to murder anybody at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, you have the fans, and I mean, we'll probably talk about this. I actually don't know what we're going to talk about for Monday's show yet.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't. I'll tell you, I mean, watch, we'll probably end up just deciding this like right on the air, but I'm leaning towards maybe doing a little bit of a High Republic kind of thing.
Okay.
But I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. And if you guys have any suggestions about maybe what we should talk about on Monday, because remember, Mondays are usually, they're either reviews or they're reactions or they're single topic, informal
topics,
shows that we just, maybe we bring friends on or something like that, and we just kind of chat about. They're actually really informal. They're not like our Friday shows. So if you guys have any ideas, let us know in the comment section, preferably before Sunday. Or if you're watching us live right now, you can put it in the chat. But I'll bring this up a little bit because it has been discussed. And you were talking about it before the show, is the whole idea of Robert Downey Jr. playing Thrawn, which is nuts. Whoever came up with that idea should just be like drawn and quartered. But at the same time, if they announced it, I would accept it. It's like I'm not, in spite of my previous comment, I'm not so against it that it would ruin it for me, only because I know that Robert Downey Jr. would actually study the character and really give it his all. And, they've made mock-ups and stuff like that of what he might look like if he played the character. And it was acceptable. I thought it was a little forced, though.
No pun intended.
I mean, again, who they should actually get to play Thrawn is the guy that did the voice. Madge Mikkelsen.
Mad Mikkelsen.
They should get him to do it. Or they could get Michael Fassbender. I think would make a fantastic
That's the one who played Magneto in the X-Men movies, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
I think that was him. They could also they could get Benedict Cumberbatch to do it too.
Doctor Strange.
No. I don't think he was Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
Look it up. He was Khan in Star Trek this is so embarrassing.
Oh,
The second one.
Into Darkness?
Yeah, Into Darkness. Yeah, that was it. But I mean that's one of those things though that it seems like they're trying to bring in a lot of these expanded universe characters, and that's how it relates, is the fact that they could bring in Mara Jade. They could not necessarily destroy the continuity of the sequel trilogy. They could softly reboot, like we were saying, 7, 8, 9, by taking Timothy Zahn's 7, 8, 9 and actually creating it. Obviously, they wouldn't call it that, but you can call it Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising. And nowhere did it really say it was episode 7 or 8 or 9, except maybe in the book. I think they may have done an opening crawl. Like Ronaldo said, it's been like 30 years since I've read those myself.
Well, I think that would be cool, man. Honestly, if they just start taking the books that people love and just turning them into movies, there you go. I mean, you could start making these one-off stuff just based off the books, and you got source material, so you don't really have to find like writers per se to get the story. I mean, you have to come up with the dialogue and how you're gonna have them deliver it. But I mean, the story's already there.
Well, and they don't even have to do that if they don't want to do it with the expanded universe. They can certainly do it with the new canon books. Look at how many wonderful books there are, and I actually think that would be best served as animated movies. That way, you don't have to worry about any of the actors or stuff like that. I mean, you can literally do that. Because in all the Padme ones, where you have like the whole Queen Shadow, Queen's Peril, and then of course you have I think it's just called Padme. You had a bunch of novels that either she was the main character or she featured very prominently in. And you could just get the woman that voices Padme in the Clone Wars.
Right.
The beautiful part about it is because you had all these main characters that we know and love anyway, generally represented in the Clone Wars. I mean, obviously, except some of the original trilogy characters like, say, Han Solo, you could do it. And you can make them as animated films, and there you go. That would satisfy the fan base. That would give you something else that you can exploit. I thoroughly believe at some point they're going to move the High Republic into television and movies.
Oh, yeah.
They're setting this up too much. And even in the beginning of the comic, which I'm sure they probably do in the book too, they actually give the timelines now of each of the eras of Star Wars. I mean, off the top of my head, I know you have the Old Republic, you have the High Republic, you have the Fall of the Jedi, you have the Reign of the Empire, you have, they actually gave names to each one of these, and they showed you what movies and stuff fell under those ages. So you could tell they're setting stuff up. They're starting to set up eras now, to the point where they're trying to even name the eras that, we're familiar with already, that we really didn't even, we didn't call it anything.
Right. But yes, that is Doctor Strange.
Okay. Ronaldo says, I wanted them to adapt, they're using Vong and the New Jedi Order books for the sequels. Yeah, that would have been cool too. They couldn't have done it really for the sequels. They would have had to do those for, say, if they were going to make a 10, 11, and 12 or something. And you were going to need a lot more than a trilogy for that, too. I mean, honestly, they could have cut off a lot of the fat, though. The Yuuzhan Vong series was like a 21-novel series. And really, you could condense that down. That's true. There was a lot of subplots. There was a lot of things that were... Some of the stuff was cool. Some of the stuff not so much. But most of it was unnecessary. Of course, you'd have to change the whole idea of Chewbacca being killed by a moon falling on him. But,
Yeah, right.
He says, yes, they gave the timeline in the book, which is cool. Yeah, so they're really trying to sell this whole New Republic thing. So I don't really think that it's just going to live in books and comics.
Yeah, the High Republic is...
they're definitely introducing that in the books and comics, which I think is actually a really interesting move, because the fact that they created a trailer for the series is a highly unusual thing. And the fact that this came from Star Wars themselves, it's like, I mean, since when have they ever created a trailer for their books? I mean, maybe in the expanded universe they may have at some point. I don't remember. They might have done it for Heir to the Empire and, the Zahn trilogy or whatever. I'd have to go back and look. But when have they ever done that?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, well, there's a lot of things that are are coming out regarding the High Republic, and I think we kind of speculated about this before, that this is the new direction, which is good because now you can start off fresh. You're not tied to the Skywalker saga. You can get away from that and create a new world within Star Wars that you can branch out with these brand new characters, and now no one has all these expectations of them. And I think that's the thing, because now whatever you put out there, the fans just have to accept that that's what this is. Whereas with the Skywalker saga, you're always thinking about, well, Luke wouldn't do that, or Han wouldn't do that, or that's not Leia, and you're tied to that because everybody's so rooted. But with something brand new like the High Republic, the only person you have to really worry about is Yoda. Yeah,
which, by the way, I'm really happy that they made Yoda a Grandmaster in this.
Okay, good.
Because that was one of the things I remember I think we did a whole show on it, actually, about where Yoda was going to fall in this. I was really happy to see that he's introduced. He's one of 2 Grandmasters that were introduced in this thing, which I know this is a topic that's coming up later in our show, so I'm not going to do it all now. But they are moving in the right direction is the point that I'm making with this. So I'm really hoping that, honestly, we get High Republic movies and we get High Republic series, because I think that they're basically setting this stuff up for a reason. I don't think that this is just going to live in books and comics. On the other hand, if it did, you could almost say that that would be a good way to sell more books and comics and say, okay, this is going to be exclusively there. But I can't imagine an entire era of Star Wars living strictly there. But then again, I would have said the same thing about the Old Republic, and look what happened.
Right.
So it remains to be seen. But what about you guys? First of all, do you like the direction that they're going? But regardless of that, when it comes to who's more powerful, it's like I have to bring it back to this now. Who's more powerful, Mara Jade or Leia? We know that it's kind of hard to compare these two because one resides primarily in the expanded universe, and the other one, we basically have very different characters in a way. When we're talking about Leia, there's the Leia of the expanded universe, and then of course there's the Leia of the new canon. And even though there's a lot of similarities, there's enough differences where I would understand that it's difficult. But take a stab at it. Leave a comment in the comment section and let me know, who do you think is more powerful and why?
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.